It's the Big Talk Guhcast with your hosts, Harry Knob and Tom Jennings. Let's do this.
Street fighting is looking for trouble. If you open your mouth, you're bound to rumble.
I still get hyped every time that song brings us into the fucking Guhcast. Welcome back.
Episode 4.
Faith No More.
That's right. It's Faith No More Day.
I've been a fan of these guys for a long time. I remember buying Angel Dust and The Real Thing. King for a Day had not come out yet.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going into our earliest recollection of these guys, I remember going to a friend's birthday party when I was like 10, and he got The Real Thing on cassette. And I remember just thinking, oh shit, that's fucking cool, dude. Because the Epic video was out, and you couldn't escape these guys when they were at their peak popularity.
I thought it was cool and different than what other bands were doing at the time.
Earlier, when I told our mutual friend that we were doing Faith No More, he was like, well, I know the one song.
Yeah.
And I think that's common. Faith No More. Oh, yeah, Epic.
Yeah.
And also like 30 or 40 other amazing songs.
Why is it that it didn't happen? Why is it that that song was the one and then nothing else?
When you say nothing else, you mean in terms of just like massive mainstream popularity.
Yeah, obviously.
Clearly, like you said, they had that mainstream success, and then everything they did after that certainly didn't crack the top of the charts. I mean, but that barely scratches the surface.
Yeah, and not to mention there's 2 albums before it with a different singer. The whole career of this band is experimental. I mean, they're always pushing themselves to do something a little bit different. They keep evolving, and each album has a different sort of identity and vibe. They were no one-trick pony.
Absolutely. They have a pretty healthy underground fan base. So if they were to do a tour, it would likely be fairly well attended. But I would say that most people who you speak to about Faith are going to be like, oh, I think I know that one song, and that's where it ends.
And that's it.
And then you don't even go into also some of the side projects and some of the other things that these guys did, especially Mike Patton, the lead singer.
He's always been very influential to me, not just in Faith No More, but his experimental avant-garde noise I found very interesting. I tried my hand at it as well. So he's had a big influence on my musical shit in general. But I've never been the biggest Mr. Bungle fan. I certainly like Mr. Bungle, but I've never been absolutely crazy about them. Like
some people will even say that they prefer Mr. Bungle to Faith No More. I certainly wouldn't go that far, but I would consider myself a big fan of Mr. Bungle. I actually saw them on this most recent Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny tour. So it was cool. It was great seeing them. If we're talking about side projects, Tomahawk is another good Faith No More offshoot.
Yes.
Led by Mike Patton, again, of course, but also has Mr. Bungle member Trevor Dunn. Yeah, I've seen them a few times. I think they've released a handful of really good albums.
Wait, you've seen Tomahawk as well?
I have.
Oh,
I saw Tomahawk. They were really cool. I would say Tomahawk is the closest thing we had to Faith No More prior to them reuniting in, what was that?
2009?
Yep, you're right, because you were still living in Jersey at the time, and we saw them in Brooklyn.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Great show. That was very exciting when they decided to come back together, and as we'll go on to explain, they would even write new material and release an album, which was fantastic. There's not many bands that have never released a truly bad record.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think any of their albums are bad. Certainly some better than others, but none are like complete garbage.
No, and I don't think the first 2 albums with Chuck Mosley really get the respect they need. I'll certainly say I had a hard time with Chuck when I first got into Faith No More. I almost ignored the first 2 albums to a degree, except for maybe Anne's Song or We Care a Lot. But as time went on, I started to realize that no, those first 2 albums are awesome. Even if Chuck is an acquired taste, musically those 2 albums kill. Especially the first one, We Care a Lot, which is a little obscure. Didn't you just recently check that one out?
I did. In preparation for this episode, I gave that record a proper listen, which I had done a long time ago, but it's been a while. And I was like, geez, this is super solid and very underrated. I think what I will say is, before we totally get into it, truly Faith No More More are not given enough credit for the influence that they've had on popular music. Sometimes they're thrown into the nu metal category, and maybe they're given credit for sort of starting this whole nu metal thing.
Yeah.
And I know that that's something that they've at times tried to distance themselves from. I think in later years, by virtue of touring with some of the bands that they influenced, maybe that they've realized like, well, it is what it is, but you wouldn't have Korn or Limp Bizkit or any of these bands that kind of followed in their wake. You could argue that this is kind of the first rap metal band in a way.
Yeah.
Epic is probably the first like rap rock song that really took off and hit the mainstream, which I guess is part of why it was so successful.
It's easy for us to get a little frustrated with it being this such a big hit, and maybe it's a little played out, but like you just said, it came out and it was very different and influential, and it was a little rap rocky, and that was new, and there was still the layered keys and all that.
The other thing is too, I feel like it's an interesting follow-up to the Fishbone episode, because this is another California-based band that started out mixing up genres, playing around with some of the conventions of rock music and incorporating weird elements. Faith No More did gather more success than Fishbone did, ultimately. I think they started and were rooted in a very similar place, kind of that SoCal punk scene, and then both of them branched off into their own separate areas. But there's not a huge discrepancy between Faith and Fishbone.
For sure, the funk metal part, the rap rock elements, that's the only difference between the two is Fishbone came from like more of a ska beginning, and Faith No More came out of more of the new wave sound.
It was almost as if Faith No More took the new wave thing and became this bastard metal stepchild of it. So what do you say? Should we get into it here?
Let's do it, man.
Faith No More is an American rock band from San Francisco, California, formed in 1979. They were originally called Sharp Young Men. So this is an interesting part of their history, because the band was formed by a vocalist named Mike Morris and a keyboardist named Wade Worthington. Neither of these guys would go on to be in Faith No More.
No, but they're instrumental to the development of what became Faith No More.
I mean, essentially, they start the band.
Yeah, isn't that kind of bizarre?
Drummer Mike Borden and bassist Billy Gould join this Mike Morris and Wade Worthington, and they become Sharp Young Men.
Oof.
But what I will say, isn't it interesting for a band of this caliber, and I've done my research, and I know you've looked these guys up, I cannot find anything about Mike Morris or Wade Worthington online. I don't even know if these guys are still alive.
No clue whatsoever. I would imagine, just because of how music works, that the two of them dabbled in other music. But ultimately, all they have to do with Faith No More is that they started the band and the other guys slowly start to join.
If you look these guys up, Mike Morris, Wade Worthington, you would think even on Discogs or Wikipedia or on the internet somewhere, even like you said, if they had tried to do some sort of other musical project or something, it would show up. Nothing. They eventually changed the name to Faith in No Man.
Oh, I didn't know that part. Faith in No Man.
And then eventually Mike Borden suggests, why don't we just call it Faith No Man?
I like that. I always heard it as Faith No Man.
Yeah, and I think it actually is stylized as Faith, period, no man.
Yeah.
They go on and record a single called Quiet in Heaven, Song of Liberty.
It's funny because immediately you can hear the genesis of Faith No More. Billy and Puffy.
Absolutely. Yep, Billy and Puffy together, and they're doing their thing right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate, man. Is that Roddy? Is he here?
So what I'm reading here is that it was released in '83. It was recorded in Matt Wallace's parents' garage. Now, Matt Wallace, as we'll go on to explain, he produces pretty much every Faith No More album. So they stick with this guy for a while. But I don't believe that Roddy is on this particular recording.
Okay. It's like a whacked out Talking Heads.
It's cool though. I like it.
Yeah, I definitely think this is cool. I think it's neat. Interesting.
Yeah,
first release.
Yeah, and I'm not that familiar with this song, so listening to it right now, it's like, you know, it's interesting that this was a very cheap, crude recording in Matt Wallace's garage, and it still kind of sounds like Faith No More.
It really does. I dig that one, man. I think it's a cool jam.
They released that, and shortly after, Wade Worthington would leave the band and be replaced by Roddy Bottum on keys.
There we go.
Now we have Roddy Bottum, Billy Gould, and Mike Borden. This is the main battery of Faith No More.
Yes, it is.
It gets a little fuzzy around this time in terms of how long they play as Faith No Man and if any more material is recorded. But at some point along the way, they would lose Mike Morris as the vocalist, and he would leave the band. The name is then changed to Faith No More. And I don't know if this story is correct because there is some conflicting reports online, but apparently because Mike Morris was the man and he left, the man was no more. So they're calling the band Faith No More.
It's not that he left, it's that they left him and they splintered and they became Faith No More.
I looked on Reddit and was trying to, again, looking up anything I could about Mike Morris and what became of him and what the circumstances of him leaving were. And it's just not really a lot of information about that you can completely reliably trust. What we do know is that he did eventually leave. The band would change their name to Faith No More. They played with several vocalists and guitarists, including actually a short period of time when they would play with Courtney Love of Hole fame.
Yeah, that's a very interesting chapter in their early career. And fortunately for us, or should I say unfortunately for us and the viewers, we can play that for you right now.
There's recordings of Courtney Love and Faith No More. I did not realize this.
There was a live show that they did with her.
Oh, no shit. This is obviously pretty well known to, fans of Faith No More that Courtney Love was associated, but I think a lot of people would hear that she was in this band at one point and be like, huh?
Yeah, I was shocked because I've never really been a fan of Hole or Courtney Love.
I actually like Hole, but I do think that she is a divisive figure, and I wouldn't even say that I'm her biggest fan, but I do like some Hole.
I liked the movie that she did with Woody Harrelson, dude.
The People versus Larry Flint.
Yeah, that movie was cool, and she was cool in that movie.
Yeah, she was good in it. Maybe it wasn't much of a stretch for her to play like a junkie.
Well, I'm attracted to junkies, so it works. Courtney Love fronted Faith No More for a public access performance back in 1984. Let's take a listen. She's a fucking dirtbag, dude.
Right in the garbage.
I love these guys, dude. They look like babies. Oh,
Here she is.
oh boy.
It's not too far off from a lot of the late 70s kind of punk rock new wave that was going on in that like CBGB's scene.
They're all dressed kind of like hippies, too.
Yeah. You can tell at this point they're finding their way.
I prefer truck.
Yes. It's funny to watch this with the knowledge that she'll go on to become one of the most like popular public figures at one time.
Yeah.
And be involved in one of the more kind of controversial and mysterious chapters in rock history. So Courtney Love doesn't stick around for too long. Eventually, they settle on vocalist Chuck Mosley. And shortly after that, we get guitarist Jim Martin. We now have our classic lineup. Their first release under the Faith No More name is We Care a Lot in 1985.
I do believe the first single they put out was also We Care a Lot.
Let's give it a listen.
A little slower than the more familiar version of this song.
Yep. So I guess this is technically their first official single.
Yes.
And we're talking about this particular version as well, which they would go on to re-record.
This song's awesome.
So again, we have Matt Wallace on the P's and Q's on this one. Recorded in 1985. I mean, I like this version too.
Me as well. It's not that different. I like it a lot. And who would have thought that this would have went on to be the theme song from a TV show?
That's right, Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe.
Mr. Rowe.
Am I right on that?
You're correct.
So what else do we got from this first record on the Gold label? Because that's the only official single that was released from it.
We got Arabian Disco.
Oh yeah, this is a cool one.
There's those flams.
So this was signed to the independent record label Boredom Records. First official release for the band and the label.
Chuck may be an acquired taste, but he really fits this early stuff.
Yeah, I like Chuck. And I think we'll go more into it, but he totally works for this, and I can completely understand why they went with him over Courtney Love.
Oh, for sure. Dude, Billy's bass is always so thumping.
I think he was one of the first guys to really be like slapping the bass, you know?
Like, yeah.
And like in rock music.
Slaps the shit out of it. But not like slap bass, like Flea. He just thumps.
Very unique style.
Yeah. This early stuff is very cool. And it's still very like skater. Chuck is very like skater punk.
Anything else that you want to highlight here?
Yes, there's a song on this first album that's just a really nice little guitar ditty called Jim.
This is a perfect time for me to talk about my love for Jim Martin.
Oh yeah, do it.
There's a reason why like all the dudes in Metallica loved him, and that he was heavily influential on a lot of these, you know, up and coming alternative metal bands. And also just a fucking amazing guitar player.
Yeah, this song's so
nice
cool.
little ditty.
It's like something Steve Hackett would have done. Like Horizons.
I feel like it's something I would have heard you do at some point.
Yes.
So I know this is right up your alley. We played Jim in its entirety.
That's okay, because Jim is a great song.
Absolutely. So right after this record in 1986, they get signed to Slash Records. This was kind of a subsidiary of Warner. And this record is called Introduce Yourself, released in April 1987.
And it's funny because despite the fact that they really broke out with Epic, my understanding is this album is really where they scratched the surface.
Absolutely. And I remember seeing a video off of this record. I forget what it was a video for. It was either And Song or We Care a Lot. And it was the first time I remember realizing, oh, this is the same band that did Epic. I guess there's more going on here. But really, I have to credit you for completely getting me into Faith No More.
It happened because of Epic. I would love to say that there was some other cooler reason why I got into them, but I saw the video for Epic and just thought it was amazing. And obviously, you remember BMG Music Club.
Oh, yeah.
Columbia House. I picked up the early Faith No More albums through there. I picked up Introduce Yourself, The Real Thing, and Angel Dust. So that's where it all began for me. But the first song they released from this Introduce Yourself record was Chinese Arithmetic.
The production has gotten better.
Absolutely.
But it's the same producer, Matt Wallace. So it seems like the band and the producer are all like simultaneously improving.
He's with them for a while, isn't he?
Pretty much their entire career.
How do you feel about apple juice?
I'd say I prefer apple cider.
Yeah, I hear that.
Even though my son just vomited a bunch of apple cider in the back of my car earlier tonight.
That sucks, man. How was that cleanup job?
You know, it's something you do, but you mainly just want to make sure that, like, he's okay.
Yeah. You do what you gotta do, man.
Right. I can't say there's a lot of singers that are completely like Chuck, man.
No, not at all. He can't even really sing. It's kind of bizarre. But yet, he does at the same time, you know? It's weird. I like it. God bless him.
Chinese Arithmetic.
That's heavy, man.
Now we're really sounding like Faith.
Yes. I actually think, ready for this? I think this album sounds better than The Real Thing.
No, I can hear that.
Everybody just is closer. The guitar has a little bit more beef to it.
Well, certainly we'll get there. The second single released is the re-recording of We Care a Lot, and I think the recording that we probably all are familiar with.
There it is.
Yep.
That's the one.
And I didn't say it before, but I've always thought the lyrics were really funny to this song. Like, it's a pretty funny song.
It's very sarcastic. They were like, I feel like I heard they were like watching Live Aid or something, and they were like, this is just ridiculous.
And an improved version of it.
Absolutely. Production really, they sound so much tighter.
It rocked.
Mike Rowe. But someone's gotta do it.
All right, so
Great tune, man.
yeah, it is, and an improved version, and really would be their first brush with success. Really cool video for this one as well. And the third single that was released is Anne's Song. This is a song where I really feel like his vocals and his style works extremely well.
When he's like scatting and doing some odd poetry is when he's at his best.
Right.
I don't know. It just doesn't seem like something you'd be doing. I mean, you, of all people. You know what I mean? I know.
I love Chuck,
Been
man.
waiting since the day I was born, huh? I asked my friend.
I mean, in some ways,
Said,
he's superior than Patton.
what am I supposed to do? It's been
And I said some ways.
since the day that I was born.
His writing, his lyrics, his lyrical content and structure are way different.
Everything you do.
They're completely different.
Completely, yeah. Mike never even did this song.
I mean, you got the
He's
world
never done this one live.
I'm pretty sure he only did like, what, maybe 2 or 3 songs from the Chuck era?
As the worm turns, I feel like I've seen like Chinese arithmetic for some reason. I don't know. I'd have to double check on that. A few. But ultimately, like, it's just not his vocal style.
That song's amazing, though.
Song's totally amazing.
And you definitely faded it before the chorus.
Did I?
I was about to get into that chorus.
Unbelievable that I did that.
That was funny. I know where you were going, though. You were just like moving. I love this chorus.
That's funny. I could picture you over there, like, getting ready to be like, yeah. and then I fucking...
And you're like, all right.
moving on. They had their own shit going on, man.
Yeah. That's such a great chorus.
This song's so goddamn fun and up. It's good vibes.
Absolutely, dude.
What a cool jam, man.
Do we have any other tracks represented from Introduce Yourself on the Gold label?
Yeah, there's other good songs on this album. There's one here called R&R that I put on the Gold label. You recognize that?
Yep. No, I love this track.
Tell me you wouldn't want to go back in time and see this lineup live, this early shit, this tour.
I mean, it's chronicled in the videos that they totally had their own style and thing going on around this time. It's no surprise that they popped off after.
For sure.
It just wasn't with Chuck.
They wouldn't have, I'm not sure they would have reached the same heights, but they were headed somewhere, dude. With or without Chuck. In the middle.
It is interesting to think about, like, where would they have gone had Chuck, stayed the course? Or was Mike Patton just bound to happen eventually?
Mike Patton was going to have his own thing, Mr. Bungle. He didn't have to join Faith No More. He had Bungle. So
Yeah, but you could argue that Mr. Bungle likely would not have reached the level of success that they did without Patton having been in Faith No More.
I feel like I read somewhere that Bungle was only signed to Warner Brothers because of something to do with Faith No More. So
Yeah, it was after they released The Real Thing and were hugely successful that they were like, oh, we should probably do whatever these guys want to do because they're making us fucking millions and millions of dollars.
Yep.
So we'll sign the lead singer's other band, Mr. Bungle. But we're jumping a little bit ahead of ourselves because that was still Introduce Yourself. We just are, I guess, caught in the moment and the period of this band, the moment in time when it would completely shift into another realm and essentially become sort of a different band entirely, but not really.
It's very bizarre, the transition between this album and the next one, because it's a natural progression.
I suppose musically it's not completely far off from Introduce Yourself, but what the lead vocalist does really does transform the music.
Oh, actually, I do have something here that we can listen to real quick before we
cool.
completely move on, because there's something between the two. So they started working on The Real Thing with Chuck, and they recorded an early version of The Morning After with him on vocals. So let's take a listen to that.
I have never heard this.
No?
No. This is cool.
I think it's very cool.
This does sound like it could have been on Introduce Yourself in a way. I love this song. I love The Real Thing.
This would have worked, dude. This is fine. Like, you can hear it. So let's jump right to it. That would ultimately be re-recorded with the new vocalist, Mike Patton, and it would sound something like this. That's a bit sped up.
Yep. Which I like.
Me too. It feels better faster. Oh man, listen to how prime they are, man.
Yes. This,
You hear that? Holy shit. That's tight.
they're killing it.
Yep. There he is.
This is The Morning After off of the album The Real Thing. Comes out in June 20th of 1989.
Holy
And Mike
shit.
Patton has entered the fold.
This song rules.
And I actually love the way that this record sounds. And I know that this is an area where you and I do not agree.
We do have slightly differing opinions on the production of this one. For some reason, I just have issues with the way the guitar sounds a little tinny when it gets heavy. Like on Introduce Yourself, Jim sounded a lot fuller, whereas on this album, he's a little bit more treble.
You know what, though? To me, it sounds like, and this comes from, I used to love rocking Les Pauls through really big Marshall tube amps.
Yes.
And I feel like the sound on The Real Thing is Jim Martin playing a fucking Gibson through a Marshall tube amp. It's the late 80s, so the production is not what it would become. Everything's a little separated from one another. There's not a lot of glue. You know what I mean? Everything's kind of...
That's a good way of putting it.
That's kind of the way that this album sounds, but I think because of that, it has a very unique flavor to it, and Epic would not sound the way that it does had it not been for those production choices. And we may as well just fucking play the song right now, because this is what blows the roof off of everything.
Everybody and their mother knows this song. Every fucking person knows this song. I think you're born with this already known, like in your DNA. It just gets passed down through the generations.
This came out and it peaked at number 9 on the U.S. Billboard 100. That's a huge hit.
Yeah, that's humongous, man. This song's played to death. I still love it.
But also one of the earliest representations of rap rock.
Ah, yes, it is. Now, I have some things to say about his choice of vocal style on this album.
Yes. In fact, I heard that Matt Wallace at one point kind of told him, like, why are you singing like that? I kind of nasally, and he's like, oh, like, trust me, this is what I want to do for this. I have something in mind. But apparently, I think that Matt Wallace at one point was kind of asking him to just, why don't you just like sing normally, like sing how you sing,
right?
And how he would ultimately sing on, you know,
subsequent albums.
Yeah, exactly. Let's remember, like, when Patton joined the band, he was like 19 years old.
Yes, true.
I mean, he was fucking young.
He has early Mr. Bungle demos, so he's already off doing his own experimental stuff, and then he just gets this gig fronting a band, and they're about to break out.
I guess the story goes that Chuck got released from the band because I think it's been reported that there was some, a good amount of substance abuse going on there.
Correct.
They decided to move on, and I think that Jim was the one who heard Mr. Bungle. He heard a Mr. Bungle tape, and he brought it to the rest of the band, and they were like, "Oh shit, let's check this guy out." And then obviously the rest is history.
And it's funny because he would ultimately go on to regret pulling him into the band.
Creative differences could have happened regardless of whether Patton was there or not. I'm not really sure of that.
I suppose that's true.
The first single released from The Real Thing is From Out of Nowhere.
You can hear what I'm talking about, though. About the production.
I know, but that rocks.
It does.
The drum production it leaves a little to be desired.
You know what? Maybe that's my biggest problem. The drums really aren't as thick, are they?
No. There's a lot of like weird kind of effecting going on there.
Yeah.
Like gated reverb and stuff like that.
I like this whole
album.
This
tune though, yeah. But he's doing he's doing that vocal style again.
But I have a weird theory about that vocal choice. I have wondered if, because Chuck had such an odd voice and really wasn't all that great, if he did this to be sort of obnoxious, similar to how Chuck was obnoxious.
I
don't know if that's right. I've never read that.
That's an interesting theory. Like a kind of variation on punk rock or like a
snotty,
right?
You know, yeah. This is a great tune, man.
Great way to kick the album off.
They're on fire.
Yeah, I don't love those drum, that snare tone, and that what's going on there.
Super thin on the drums.
But we do have Matt Wallace again on this record,
which is weird because he really killed it on the last one, in my opinion.
I think they just went with a different sound for the drums.
Yeah.
So obviously we have Epic at number 2, which became the smash. And then at number 3, Falling to Pieces, which was also a pretty successful single. In fact, I think it's probably their second most successful.
And I personally prefer it to Epic. I think Billy's the best. His tone is so goddamn cool.
The man. They lost Mike Morris, who was the man, and then Billy Gould became the man.
He became the man. Yeah, I prefer this song to Epic, man. Personally.
You know what's really awesome about Epic, though, dude, is the end, which I know we didn't play, but that whole end solo part and then into the piano bit, like, that is so good.
Yes, it is. And very cool live, too. The crowd gets very into it when that bit happens.
But this song, in its own right, an argument could be made that on any given day, I would prefer to hear it falling to pieces.
Yes.
Epic.
If it came on the radio, you'd be like, oh, sweet. You'd leave this one on for sure.
Right. I still leave Epic on when it comes on.
Somebody put me together.
Funky.
So I think this song was also fairly successful, released as the second single, and let's see where it ended up on the chart. It looks like it hit number 92 on the US Billboard 100.
Well, that's a pretty big drop, though. Epic was 6.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it tells the story of Epic being such an anomaly, and I think that part of why it was so successful is because it was this rap rock hybrid. There was a musical shift that was happening. I mean, this was around the time of like hair metal was completely dominating in 1990.
Yeah, big time.
And then you have this come out, and it's completely different than all that.
And it slightly predates Nirvana. So
Yes.
it's like kicks off a bit of the whole
Paves the
alternative.
way.
Yeah, it does.
This paves the way for Nirvana.
It's funny to say that. You don't hear that a lot, but it's true.
So we have our fourth single off Faith No More, The Real Thing, Surprise You're Dead.
One of my favorite songs on this whole entire album. And
It
it's...
completely smokes.
Yes.
Jim fucking killing it.
Straight like thrash jam. And the break into this next bit is awesome as shit.
Listen to this change up here.
Kills.
That makes James Hetfield like blush.
They were like total bros. Cliff was tight with them.
And also, Mike Patton is singing more like the Mike Patton that would ultimately come.
Yes, he totally is. This song is an odd one because it's like the only one out on the album that goes in this direction. The rest still has like a lot of heavy keys and shit, and he's doing his slightly more obnoxious Patton voice.
I know when me and you have talked about this album over the years that you don't really rank it very high. Like, I think there's been times where we've sent our Faith No More album rankings to each other, like the true nerds that we are. And I usually will have this at number 3, and I don't know that you would have it that high.
It usually just boils down to a few choices, which is Patton's voice and the way the whole album is just produced that way.
There's a song on this record that it's actually one of my favorite songs from them, and I don't think that we included it on the gold label. It's the title track.
I feel like I contemplated having this song on the gold label, but it just, I don't remember why. Maybe it was a little long, or it just didn't quite.
I love this track.
Definitely a cool song. I like it a lot as well.
And you got Billy bringing it in.
I'm gonna say it once again. Introduce Yourself is like produced in a much fuller way. This sounds like the 70s, like recorded like a 70s album or something. Do you hear what I mean?
No, I do think that there's more presence overall to Introduce Yourself. And I think it maybe all the reverb and all the effects that are going on
Yeah.
that make it sound less kind of impactful.
Yeah, there we go. That word sounds right.
Or immediate. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, Roddy.
Bringing that thrash, son.
Yeah, Puff.
Go get it, boys. I love this riff when it comes in here.
Awesome.
I mean, Patton's doing his early Patton thing here, but I love this whole sequence.
Look, I can say what I say about this album, but like I fully embrace early Patton and this whole album. You know what I mean? Like I fucking love it.
So let's see where the real thing ultimately landed on the charts.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Because I know that this was a very successful album for them when it came out. The chart performance for The Real Thing, the US Billboard 200, The Real Thing reached number 11.
Damn.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. And it was certified platinum.
Good for them, man.
And, you know, obviously with that comes the spoils of mainstream success. And I think it would also lead to Mr. Bungle getting a record deal
Yep.
and releasing albums on major labels.
There is one Bungle song that I do like quite a lot from the first album. Hold on.
From the, play some from that first one.
I know this song mostly as Travolta, but I guess they had to change the name to quote unquote for the actual album. That's heavy, dude.
That's heavier than Faith was up to this point.
Yes. That's like almost spooky-ish. And then we got...
It's like demented carnival music.
Yep. Which, depending
like
on
this
how
is
you look at it, may be a good thing or a bad thing.
You could argue that the production on this is a little better than The Real Thing.
I would say so.
And Patton's definitely the Patton that we know him as on this. It was almost like he was playing a character on that first Faith No More, that, you know, The Real Thing.
Yeah, maybe he was. I'm telling you, because I really think like Chuck was a character and maybe even Courtney was a character. He like had a fucked up, obnoxious character.
Right?
Who could sing really well, though. I like this.
This album's full of this stuff.
There's some really, really good shit on this first one. I actually like the third album the least. I know a lot of people really love California, but
I do. I like it a lot.
I'd actually run into people beyond you. Like when I was a lifeguard one time, somebody brought up to me, "You like Mr. Bungle?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh, dude, the California album."
I like all of their albums a lot. Bungle's totally worth checking out.
Well, there is a live album between The Real Thing and Angel Dust.
Yes, live at the Brixton Academy.
And there's 2 new songs on there. Let's check out the Cowboy Song. Roddy's starting things off. He's not on King for a Day a whole lot.
No, he's not.
Very Real Thing like.
Jim bringing in those big chords.
Yep.
This is kind of one of my favorite, like, deep cuts, like B-sides.
Yeah. This is a cool song. Don't really hear this one a whole lot.
Definitely sounds like it was from the Real Thing era.
He still kills that voice no matter what, though. I mean, whether...
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, he's straight smoking it with the vocals.
I mean, if you hear that singing, there's only one person doing it, Mike.
I was going to say Anthony Kiedis, but...
I know, weren't they... They had like a whole beef going on.
They really did, man. Anthony was real pissed at Mike for the way...
What, did Anthony think that Mike was aping his style?
Yeah. Anthony thought Mike was straight ripping him off and doing the rap stuff. And
well, so you could argue that when he joined Faith No More, he took on that kind of persona for that record to distinguish it from Bungle.
Maybe, but I mean, he still sang a little bit like that on Bungle as well. He's still transitioning. Once we hit like 1992 or whatever, he really becomes Michael Patton.
In which the year of 1992 would bring us the album Angel Dust. I would say a lot of the Faith No More intelligentsia, including you and myself, would consider this to be probably the high point of their career.
It's my favorite album.
So this is something I wanted to bring up earlier. What got me into Faith No More, like really got me into them, was we were doing an original Guh, where you came over to my house. You had brought some CDs because previous times we did a Guh, it would just be all my own CD collection.
Yep.
And you're like, I'm going to bring some of my CDs over. And you brought Angel Dust as one of the CDs.
Yep, that's right.
And I remember seeing it and being like, I knew the one album. This like hadn't crossed my fucking consciousness yet. I forget which song you played off this. It may have been Everything's Ruined.
It could be.
It was one of those moments where my mind was completely blown.
This was the album that changed my musical world, really. Because, this album is a lot darker and more experimental and bizarre, and Patton finally becomes the Mike Patton that we'll all know for good.
This probably is one of the stranger albums that's been released by like a major record label.
I remember, I got them from BMG, these CDs, so I was all stoked as shit from getting the Real Thing. And then I put this album in. And I was like, wait a minute. And this changed my musical world.
This is so completely ahead of its time.
I know. Unbelievable.
So this is released on June 8th, 1992. Last album to feature guitarist Jim Martin. Also the first album where Mike Patton had like a major influence on the way it sounded.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, he came in after basically the last album was ready to go. He just wrote new lyrics. But this one, he's in the creative process completely. And it shows.
And we should mention that we're playing Midlife Crisis, which is the first single that was released from Angel Dust. And now, obviously, after a huge, major album and success with Epic, I'm sure the label is expecting something with this. And It actually did hit number 1 on the U.S. Modern Rock Tracks chart and reached number 10 on UK Singles chart. So it did okay.
I didn't realize that. It actually did hit number 1, Midlife Crisis.
On the Modern Rock chart.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. Like, I think you were headed in this direction. After the last album, which was a big hit and everybody seemed to like it, they did like a radical departure into this darker, more experimental route. You would have thought they would have leaned more into the last album, but they did not do that.
No. Mike Patton had a lot more influence on this one. So I think when they had Patton join the band, I think the real thing was mostly written musically.
Yeah. He came in, like I said, and just sort of wrote lyrics and they were good to go.
Right.
Chuck was fired later in the process.
They wrote this album as a band and he was incorporating his completely different elements, which I think at one point Jim Martin described as gay disco. The next single off Angel Dust here is A Small Victory, released on August 3rd, 1992. Definitely one of their strongest tracks.
I did say radical departure, but that's not to say that you can't hear anything from where they came from, you know?
For sure. This is a natural progression.
Yes. That's probably the closest he comes on this whole album to sounding like the real thing.
For sure.
Vocally.
And do you remember the video for this? It was like this kind of whole like World War II like video thing. It looked like it had pretty high production values.
It's been a while since I've seen it, man. We ought to watch it.
Yeah, we should. So again, we have producer Matt Wallace coming back for Angel Dust. And there's a really good, if you look on YouTube, you can find them in the studio making this record, and there's a pretty good fly-on-the-wall type documentary about them doing it.
Yeah, it's excellent. I've seen it.
But apparently it wasn't all peaches and cream with Jim.
No, he was pretty unhappy with the direction the band was heading in. And I've also heard him say like he didn't feel like he had enough of himself on the album, but he's like all over the album. So
I remember reading that he was complaining that he felt like his guitar was maybe mixed a little too low.
perhaps it is, but not in a bad way. He's where it sounds most natural.
The next single off Angel Dust here is Everything's Ruined.
Keyboards are instrumental to their sound, man. Overall. And nobody says it. Everybody talks about Jim Martin. Or like we'll run our mouths about Billy. Roddy's there for most of these songs, holding shit in the background down, filling it all out.
And actually, in a lot of ways, Roddy gives Faith No More their signature sound.
That's true, yes.
I've been wanting to give Roddy a nice shout out this whole episode, and I'm glad that I was finally able to.
Dude, for sure. I've always thought he was incredible. And once again, a little sad that he wasn't around quite as much on King for a Day. He's missed.
Patton is so good on this record. This is arguably one of the best rock vocal performances recorded on record ever.
Everybody's killing it on this album.
This has such a funny music video.
It is amazing, like, how influential they go on to be. Or even just, I hate to say it, just Patton himself. Just how goddamn famous and influential he'd become. The way this band, they were famous at this point, but after they broke up, their fame turns into legend. By the time they returned, they were more famous than ever.
Yeah, it's like they transcended. Their influence and impact was more widely known at that point. So Everything's Ruined comes out. That's the third single. And at this point, I don't know that they're really charting much. I think in terms of mainstream success with this album, it's becoming more of a culty thing.
Yeah, the diehards.
Then we have the next single released. Did we put Easy on the gold label because this was released as an official single, although I don't think it was originally included on the record?
No, I don't believe I put it on the gold label, but that's because I tried to stick to things that weren't cover songs.
Right.
But that's not to say that this song isn't awesome, because it's an excellent cover and deserves to be showcased. It shows another side of the band, too.
And this actually would become pretty successful as far as a single.
Yeah, in its own right, it was.
This hits number 58 on the Hot 100.
Girl, I'm leaving you tomorrow.
And this also showcases that Mike Patton had some serious vocal chops going on.
Absolutely, man. Killing it.
And this is another thing that distinguished them from a lot of other kind of metal and rock bands that took themselves like way super seriously. Like they had the presence of mind to just throw in this kind of breezy, like soft.
Yeah, they weren't
soft
afraid.
Rock cover.
Weren't afraid to just do it. Do what they wanted to do. Sometimes metal scene can get too wrapped up in itself, and it just has to be metal for the sake of it. And these guys are like, nah, let's do what feels right. And this felt right.
It's also kind of funny because it's very ever so slightly tongue-in-cheek, this version.
For sure.
But they're also killing it.
Yeah, they kill this, man. Mike is unbelievable.
I love this part here.
Yeah. Ew.
Especially when you hear it compared to the original version. And this, we haven't mentioned that this is a cover of a Lionel Richie, a Commodores song.
They do some good covers, man. This isn't the only good one.
I was going to say that I think the Commodores are awesome.
Oh, the Commodores are really awesome. I got most of their shit, if not all of it.
Lionel Richie is awesome.
Yes, he is. He hit it big time as hell, dude, when he split.
That dude could write a song.
Sure could. He really wasn't the main singer in the Commodores, though. Sometimes it feels like it because of how famous he ultimately got, but he's not the singer of Brick House and shit.
That's true.
I don't want to be wrong here, but I feel like he was the sax and sang backing vocals primarily in the beginning.
It's a nice little tidbit.
There's so many good songs, man. We could just keep going, but let me put on something that I have on the gold label here, Caffeine.
Song rocks.
See, it's like Jim said something about, like, he didn't feel like his guitar is there, and I'm like, yeah, there it is. And it's nice and full.
I remember watching a performance of this. Do you remember when on MTV they would sometimes have bands play live and there'd be people up standing like in, you know, on different levels, like watching them?
Yeah.
And they play this, and there's a performance of it, and I remember thinking that it was one of the like most visceral and awesome rock performances that I had seen.
Is that footage out there?
Yeah.
I need to go find that.
Mike kills it on this. But yeah, this would unfortunately be the end of the road for Mr. Jim Martin.
He couldn't handle it anymore. Mike Patton got under his skin too much with his gay disco.
So do you think that Mike Patton is the primary reason why Jim ended up leaving the band?
I think somebody asked him once, hey, Jim, why did you leave Faith No More? And he said, Mike Patton.
According to Roddy, Jim was fired via fax.
Damn.
So he was actually like fired from the band.
Does it say why he was fired?
It doesn't. And Jim states that it was his decision to leave.
So it's one of those where I quit, no, you were fired.
Right.
Here's what happened, dude. He was not getting along with the singer, and the band was happy with the sound that they were going into. And they were like, dude, you're being too negative. You're out of here. You're being
Entirely
disruptive.
possible.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Jim wouldn't do a whole lot post Faith No More.
No. He puts out like a solo album. He sings backing vocals on a Metallica song.
The thing that he's primarily known for post Faith No More is that he's like really into pumpkin farming.
Oh, yeah, right?
And I think he's like won awards for having grown the hugest pumpkin. I'm not making this up.
No, I know this. Like, he was a pumpkin farmer. And he was also in Bill and Ted's.
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yeah.
That he comes out and yells, "Station."
That's right. So in that future, he did not leave Faith No More.
In fact, in that Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey future, Faith No More was revered as almost like a Beatles level type band.
It's true.
And Sir James Martin of Faith No More, founder of the Faith No More Spiritual and Theological Center.
After Jim leaves the band, obviously they go through a transitional period because you're losing a major member of the band. They go through a guy named Justin Broderick and Geordie Walker. Justin Broderick was Godflesh guitarist.
Oh, okay.
And Geordie Walker was from the band Killing Joke.
Huh.
And it says they were both invited to join Faith No More and I think play with them briefly, but then ultimately declined. They were considered to be replacements for Jim.
Right.
And what I've heard is that part of the reason they didn't go with this Geordie Walker guy is because Killing Joke was such a huge influence on Faith.
Okay.
They thought by getting this Geordie Walker guy, they would just sound like Killing Joke.
All right.
And they wouldn't sound like Faith No More anymore.
That makes sense. I get it.
So they ultimately go with Mike Patton's Mr. Bungle bandmate, Trey Spruance. He would join them for the 1995 record, King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime. Oh, man.
Title track.
This is absolutely one of my favorite Faith No More songs and one of my favorite songs.
I feel like this album is a bit underrated, dude.
And you got some Roddy there.
Yes, he's here, but his presence isn't as abundant on this record. But notice when he's there, it's one of the best songs.
So apparently Martin was fired via fax. Trey Spruance is brought in. Although he does not play on, like, he doesn't last for very long. Like,
No.
he doesn't join them on the tour. I think he really just records, like, writes and records this album with them and then leaves. Definitely make sure we get this chorusing because I fucking love it.
Look at the things that never care for you now. Who's winning?
Awesome.
I feel like this sounds like they, even though I go back and forth between this album and Angel Dust, to be honest with you.
Yeah?
And I think I probably listen to this album more regularly than I listen to Angel Dust.
Maybe you burned out Angel Dust all the younger years.
It's possible.
You
It's
know?
possible. But yeah, that was the title track. Amazing song. How many songs are on this record?
14 songs on this album?
There's so many good ones. Comes out March 13th, 1995. Here on this album, this is what's interesting. We don't have Matt Wallace as the producer. We have Andy Wallace.
Yes. Is there any relation?
Who subsequently has no relation to Matt Wallace.
Oh, just another Wallace.
But Andy Wallace, he's one of the most well-known and well-regarded mixing engineers, especially from around this time period and especially in the genre of hard rock music. So they're in good hands. And actually, you could argue that this is one of their best recorded and sounding records.
What about Joey Wallace?
I don't know if I'm familiar with him.
Well, I made him up. I remember when I first heard this song, since we were still doing sort of like more punk stuff at the time, I thought it would have been cool if we had covered this. Obviously, it was a bit out of our range at the time, but I always thought that would have been cool.
Now, obviously, we're not feeling much presence from Roddy on this one. This is a more kind of straight-ahead rocker. But it freaking rocks.
Yes, it does.
Awesome chorus. So this is the first single that they released off Pink for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime. And actually hits number 1 on the UK rock and metal charts.
So they're still charting, but it's not the Billboard, like, the
they're
big
not
deal
doing
ones.
Not doing much in the US. What I'm reading is that Roddy was grieving the death of his father and of his friend Kurt Cobain.
Considering he used to date Courtney and all that, I'm sure he was probably tight in that circle with them. That's a bummer. So that's primarily kind of why he wasn't around.
Right around the time of this, when they were recording this. And obviously, like, with the whole thing with Jim getting fired and them bringing in Trey, you know, I mean, you certainly still have Billy and Mike holding things down.
They're the backbone anyway, really, at the end of the day. No offense, Roddy. You have a nice backbone. Yeah, this one's on the gold label.
The second single off Kink for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime.
Where did this single land? Is there any information on that?
So this one comes out in May and also hits number 1 on the UK rock and metal charts, but doesn't do anything in the States, really.
So in 95, the UK were feeling Faith No More.
Oh, yeah.
I was also feeling Faith No More.
Well, obviously, once you get deeper into Faith and start exploring their discography, this is an album that clearly, like, rises to the forefront as some of their strongest material.
Some of my favorite stuff is on this album.
I just feel like these are just such well-written songs on this album.
Straight ahead rockers.
And obviously any of the keyboard stuff that's going on is sort of basic. And I don't know if it's because Roddy came in and like quickly did things and was obviously going through a lot, but yeah, his presence is not very felt on this.
No, unfortunately not. But again, it gives this album like its own vibe. And every album has its own sort of vibe.
It's always funny until someone gets hurt, and then it's just hilarious.
It's pretty hilarious when someone gets hurt.
So says Mike.
Mike thinks it's hilarious when people get hurt.
Around this time, 95, when this album comes out, this is obviously when we're entering the post-grunge era because Kurt Cobain has
Unalived himself.
done the deed and everything changes.
Like overnight.
So next they would release the single Evidence, which is another example of them spreading their wings.
There's a lot of spreading wings. No, they just do whatever the fuck they want to do, and that's why I've always loved these guys.
Our little band that we had at one time definitely took some influence from this track and
Yes.
these sort of jams.
If you want to open home,
Let's be honest, we even have a song called Evidence 2.
just put your head down and go.
But unfortunately for us, Mike Patton is not singing on it.
No.
Step aside the piece of a circumstance.
Man, where'd this guy show up from? Like, Jim Martin saw this guy and said, whoa, I need to get this guy in the band. And then he became, I hate to say it, but kind of like the identity of the band. It's sort of.
Yeah. But you could also, we shouldn't discount some of the influence that Trey brought to the band as well.
No, definitely not.
Because this album does shift genres and move all over the place, whereas Angel Dust was a little more cohesive, even in its kind of chaos.
Yeah.
This album drastically shifts genres from track to track.
Yeah. Much more like a Bungle album might.
His guitar playing is top notch on this record.
Definitely. And there's things that Jim wouldn't have been able to do. Hate to say it, love Jim. But this shit wouldn't be happening with Jim.
This is such a smooth track.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Anything you say, and we know you're guilty.
His voice makes me laugh. It's so good.
Hands up your head and
And you know who else? The ladies love Mike Patton.
Yes. And they should.
you won't feel me.
You won't feel me. Ladies love Mike Patton, dude.
LLMP.
Wow.
So what else do we have from this record on the gold label? Because I know that we have at least like 5 tracks represented from this.
There's other songs on here on the gold label, dude, like Get Out.
What if there's no more fun to have? Ain't all
I remember
got
putting this
is
CD in for
what
the
I
first time. Like, I
have.
bought it when it came out, and that riff came on, and I was like, hell yeah.
Cut my losses and get out now. Get out right now.
I'm just jamming out over here.
Puffy loves his tom tom.
There's something stronger than me. There's something I don't wanna see. What do you think growing in me?
That's awesome, dude. The drumming right there.
So good. It's such a good way to kick in an album.
It's very stripped down from Angel Dust, this song. Like, starting this album right off the bat like this, very stripped down
Well,
from Angel
and it's
Dust.
almost telling you in a way like you're not going to get as much Roddy.
Yeah.
One more track we should play from here, and then we move on. The Gentle Art of Making Enemies.
The Gentle Art of Faith No More.
The words are so familiar. All the same grades, the same mistakes. It doesn't have to be.
I love the minimalism of this part.
If you don't make a friend now, one might make you so
Bass.
gentler.
Bass.
Making enemies.
Yes.
Don't you look so surprised? Happy birthday, fucker! You blow that candle out, we're gonna kick you!
I use that line, of course. I mean, if you're a fan of this band, of course you say happy birthday, fucker.
It's kind of a way to know if you actually are into these guys or not.
Yep.
Just one more excuse.
You put up one hell of a fight! You put up one hell of a fight!
I wanna be your very best excuse.
I never felt this much alive! I never felt
Yep.
this much alive!
Yeah, so this album
It's a good
goes gold in the UK, does okay, but doesn't do that great in the States.
This whole
And obviously-
album was getting UK shit on the UK charts, gold in the UK.
Yep.
Damn.
So it does well overseas, but unfortunately in the homeland here, not as well received, especially given how successful they were in the early part of the 90s.
Yes.
Then that brings us to the next record, Album of the Year. Now we bring in a different guitarist into the fold, John Hudson.
Yeah, and he's a friend of whose? He got brought into the band.
I think he was Billy Gould's roommate.
That sounds right. Yep. And he's been with the band ever since.
A really fucking solid and good guitar player, and sort of unheralded in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you know, he comes later. You know, that you had Jim, you had Trey, and no offense to John, because he's excellent. He just sort of, unfortunately, kind of flies under the radar, but he's just as good as the previous guys.
His tone is fucking good. His technique is good.
Yep.
And as far as I can tell, a lot of his contributions to the band are good. So, hell yeah, John Hudson, let's go.
Now, the first single from this album was Ashes to Ashes.
Yep, released May 19th, 1997. The first single off Album of the Year, Ashes to Ashes. And I would say 100% one of the highlights.
Yes, it's on the gold label.
Jeez, this album is so good too.
Yes, man. And Roddy's back in full force.
Even when these guys were in disarray, they were still making killer records.
Yeah, we haven't even really quite talked about the dysfunction that really was going on behind the scenes with this band. They were not getting along at this point.
Apparently they were like very rarely even in the same city at the same time.
This album was like kind of recorded like separately from each other.
very piecemeal.
Yeah, they
And of course
weren't doing good.
you know, who do you think's holding it all together? Billy Gould.
Billy Gould.
In fact, he's one of the producers of this album. So yeah, Ashes to Ashes comes out. Again, I don't know that this album does particularly well in terms of chart success. It hits number 23 on the mainstream rock, and I'm talking about Ashes to Ashes as a single.
Right.
So not too bad. And I remember actually around this time hearing Last Cup of Sorrow, the second single off of this record, on rock radio, and thinking that it was a really cool track and not making the connection that it was the same band that had put Epic out.
This was pretty damn popular when it came out, man. I remember it being popular on the radio. I remember people talking about it in school and shit.
And the music video for this is really fucking cool. It's got this whole Albert Hitchcock thing going on, the vertigo.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really cool. It's been a while since I've seen it. I love how sarcastic the album title is. Album of the Year.
I think they knew at this point that their star had fallen, and they were just kind of playing with it.
They weren't even getting along, man. Like you said, they were like recording it separately and shit. They're like, yeah, album of the year, there it is. But again,
Mike Patton can write a chorus, dude.
yeah, he can. This was when I started hearing people mentioning Faith No More again. So, like, my jokes aside, like, people were like, ooh, Faith No More, that's a cool song. But like you said, people weren't even always making the connection with, like, the same guy who was like, you want it all, you know?
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't.
They really bring it on this album, despite not, like, getting along or even being in the studio together.
So the next track we have, or at least the next single, is Stripsearch, which I know is another gold label track. And I actually think that John Hudson is the one that brought this beat and this sequence to the band, and they wrote this song around it.
Oh, really? That's cool. I did not know that. I was very, very into that when I first heard that little loop there, man.
I love this song.
I like when it rolls in right there. Doesn't really sound like a band in full-blown dysfunction about to break up mode to me.
No, in fact, if I had to speculate, I'd say that Billy probably took this on as a studio project, and he was the one who was gathering everyone up, making it happen, putting it together.
I bet you're right.
And it sounds fucking good.
Yeah, it really does.
But around this time, you can also, in a way, tell that maybe things are about to crumble.
What kind of positioning does this album do on the charts, or even this single?
Let's see. This doesn't do much, despite it being an amazing track. Yeah, and Roddy around this time was spending a lot of time playing with Imperial Teen.
Yeah, his
I
other
think
band.
that started, it started becoming his primary focus.
They have some cool songs too.
They absolutely do. That's some really cool. That's some really cool guitar playing. Like John kind of kills it on this whole track.
Yeah, he just has that feel to it, that whole vibe. I still absolutely love this song, dude. It always gets me going.
And another great vocal performance from Mike Patton, of course.
Yep, what else is new?
Dude, we should play an Imperial Teen song. You know, we just brought it up, but Roddy would have a side project called Imperial Teen. There's a song called Runaway that I really like a lot.
They have a song called Imperial Teen. Do you like when bands do that?
Yeah. The album, the song.
And the band name.
Yes. I like it better when bands do that. This song is great.
Do you want to go to that party?
Yeah, I would absolutely fucking party with Roddy.
It looks like a house that you would like. It looks like it's from like the 80s or something. Do you want one of those Roddy masks?
I see it.
I've heard this song. This one's cool. Would you see them in concert?
Why not? This has a pretty solid chorus here. Decidedly more indie pop.
You've sent this to me before, dude.
Yeah, dude.
I know you
great.
have. Yep. Yeah, that's catchy, dude.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes.
Always have loved that track. So Roddy gets points in my book as being
Roddy's
a
the
talented motherfucker.
He's the man, dude.
What other tracks off Album of the Year do we have on the gold label?
Got that feeling.
Got that feeling. Looking for another loving. I got that feeling. I can't stop winning.
That's a sweet riff.
I always like this.
A to Z. Look what you're missing as we speak. Your numbers rising. Take a peek. There's just enough to go around. Get a piece. Your own little piece.
So I'm reading that this album received largely negative reviews.
Really?
At the time. Yeah, Rolling Stone wrote, "They're floundering around desperately, groping for a sense of identity and direction in a decade that clearly finds them irrelevant." Ooh,
Jesus Christ. I don't know about all
that's
that.
brutal. And I also don't agree with it.
Not at all.
Pitchfork wrote, "Album of the Year leaves one feeling like waking up and finding last night's used condom."
No.
Okay. Hell yeah. Around this time, they toured with Limp Bizkit a lot.
That
And
riff
apparently
makes sense.
they were frequently booed by Faith No More fans,
Limp
which is
Bizkit.
kind of, yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
It makes sense. That's funny, dude.
I mean, look.
They were probably booing them too.
Dude, you and I will not back away or hide from our Limp Bizkit fandom.
Nope. Hell
And
no.
Limp Bizkit, whether Faith No More wants to admit it or not, is an offshoot of like what Faith No More created.
Yeah, it is. Took me a long time to accept that, but I love it.
And I'm not saying that fucking Mike Patton and Fred Durst are necessarily in the same class.
It branched off from this type of stuff.
Yeah.
This is where the band would say no more, though, right? They'd be like, all right, we're out of here. We're done.
Yep.
Album of the year. Goodbye.
And you could tell that they weren't receiving, any love from critics. And Patton was starting to branch out and start doing some of his solo stuff. And I think he created Ipecac Records around this time.
Yes. And he's doing Fantomas and shit.
Which I've actually seen Fantomas live.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Mike Patton offshoots.
Apparently. Damn, man. Lucky.
And Fantomas was great. You have, Buzz Osborne on guitar from the Melvins, Dave Lombardo on the kit from Slayer.
Yes.
You had Trevor Dunn again from Bungle on bass. It was a tight band. So we eventually get to 2009. There were rumors and rumblings that Faith No More was going to actually get back together and start playing some shows. Because there's been a long period of inactivity from Faith No More. Obviously, all the various members are doing their own thing. Mike Patton, of course, being the most prolific during this time.
I want to make it clear that they were a dead band.
Yo, yeah, dude. I
Dead
remember
as a band
us going back and forth talking about how it would be a fantasy to see this band.
And you and I were fucking beside ourselves, because as soon as it was announced, we were scooping tickets as quickly as fucking humanly possible.
Because we thought it had been impossible.
It was impossible. It was. It's one of those weird things where I don't know what happened. They all grew up into men and just put all the bullshit aside, because this band was history. I don't know that they hated each other. It was more just like, nah, man, I can't even work with these guys. It's too hectic to work within the confines of that band. And then 2009 rolls around and they're like, fuck it, let's do it.
And you and I saw them in Brooklyn, and we also saw them in Philly at the Mann Center. We saw them at both shows for that. And dude, both times it was fucking awesome. They were great.
Incredible. Both shows were absolutely incredible. I have fond memories from both of them. The Brooklyn show, I hurt my foot. I'm an absolute maniac in the Philly show. Running on the seats.
Yeah, I remember that show.
Absolutely losing my bullshit.
At one point, I actually didn't know where you were. So we're watching this at the Mann show, and it's one of those like shed type places where part of the place is covered, and we're on the lawn, and you just kind of like storm where the seating area is, and you somehow like get in, and don't you like run all the way up to the front almost?
I met a girl, and then her and I ran up there. I don't remember exactly how. I was like run on the seats, and she fucking laughed, and then took my hand, and then we like ran up to the front somehow. Got all the way up front. I was running all over the place.
It's definitely at that point I remember just being like, I have no idea where Tom is, but these guys are fucking jamming out, and I'm good.
I didn't care. I had been a fan of these guys since I was a fucking child. I never thought I would have a chance to see these guys. And there they were. I lived in the moment, man.
And I guess I should more specifically say that when they reformed in 2009, it was the album of the year era of the band. So we have our classic lineup along with John Hudson on guitar. Apparently, Roddy said that the band wanted to have Jim as part of the reunion tour, but it just like didn't quite happen. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, I heard they did try, like reached out, put feelers out. And there was even like maybe even slight tentative plans, like, oh, cool, this could happen. But then I think Jim was just like, nah.
I mean, and they ultimately, they go with John, and I feel like he's the right choice because certainly every time I've seen them, like he's been super solid and they sound good.
He's the right guy. Besides, Jim would have been faced with playing songs he didn't play on.
Well, and let's not also forget that around this time with John, they start writing new songs.
Yes.
So maybe that wouldn't have happened if Jim had been brought back into the fold because it was almost sort of more of a reunion thing. At this point, it's almost like they're picking the band back up again, and now they start writing new tracks. While we thought that it would be impossible for them to get back together and play shows, it was even more impossible that they would write and make an album and for it to actually be fucking good.
I know. What a spectacular thing to have happen, man. Because neither of them should have ever happened, and yet they both did.
Absolutely. Soul Invictus, which comes out in 2015.
And it had a really interesting first single in Motherfucker.
Yeah, this was the one that they teased everyone with. And it's not so much indicative of what the rest of the album is, but it's a fucking cool track.
It's also like partially sung by Roddy.
I think he wrote the song.
Yeah, I think it's a Roddy song. I do like this song.
Hilarious that they chose this as the first single. Because at this point, they were just on their own. They weren't on a major label at this point. They're on their own, they're in control of their own destiny.
Force fed more than we'd eat in the wild. Grazed on a mash that could suffocate a child.
I remember this coming
Loaded,
out.
Promoted in an ode to pomp and style.
I was just happy that there was new Faith No More. I remember being very, very psyched and excited around this time when this stuff was coming out.
I hate to say it, but the anticipation was so high that like a bootleg of a pre-mix leaked, remember? And we had, unfortunately, admittedly had like a shitty, there was a shitty version out on the web.
Yes.
And then the real album dropped with the proper mix, and it was very I loved it, man. I was super excited and totally happy with this album.
First studio album since 1997. The longest gap between two albums in their career. Obviously.
97 to 2015.
It was also the first album since Angel Dust to feature the same lineup as its predecessor.
Oh shit, you know what? I didn't really think about that.
And they also brought back Matt Wallace to produce it.
That helps. Doesn't
it was mainly Billy.
Yeah.
And Matt Wallace was involved in the final mix.
Faith No More is in good hands with Billy.
So the second single that they release is Superhero, which I also think is a highlight.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we didn't know what to expect when this, album came out. Like, I know I was really hoping it wasn't going to be a stinker.
It's not a stinker. If I had
Not at all.
It's not as heavy. It's still heavy, but it's not as heavy as I thought it was gonna be, I suppose. That's about the only thing I can say about it. Like, I guess once again, it's still heavy.
I like that this kind of brings back an early Jim style riff.
Yeah. Production's a little bit more muddy on this one. It's not super crisp.
I will say that if we're going to be critical of anything, like the production on this, I think you said it very well there. Like, not maybe as crisp or snappy as some of the previous stuff.
But again, as I've said numerous times, it continues to give the album its own vibe, its own individual vibe. Because all the songs work and sound part of the album.
I like this album a lot.
Definitely.
And I don't even hate the production. I think it's a really fucking solid album.
It's got some of my favorite jams on here, dude. Separation Anxiety and Sunny Side Up. I love both of them.
Let's hear Sunny Side Up.
I'll be your leprechaun.
Such a good track, dude.
And it's okay. Dip into the sugar bowl. Whoa.
Yeah. The other thing is this was Faith No More's return to prominence, because this album was pretty well reviewed.
We weren't the only people in the world that were beyond themselves that this band made a new fucking album and brought it and didn't bomb like occasional reunion albums can.
No, I think this album went above and beyond in a lot of ways. You mentioned Separation Anxiety. Put that one on, because this is one of the absolute highlights.
It quickly became one of my favorite Faith No More songs, period.
And then you have Puffy bringing back the original Faith No More beat, dude. And here we have, it comes full circle again, dude. He's not quite doing the flam as much as he did before.
That is true. It's not quite plop. Plop. That riff is cool as shit, dude.
I mean, this is a top tier track right here.
It's mine.
I think this album just keeps bringing them, dude. There's all kinds of great shit on here.
This album is way better than anything you could expect from a quote-unquote reunion album.
I like just about every damn song on it. Black Friday's great, and that's on the gold label as well. I always thought this song was so fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Why, chill, what you gonna do?
boys were all together when they wrote this album too, right? Like this was like a let's get back together in the studio and do this right.
I think if I'm not mistaken, the band had gotten together and much like The Real Thing, put a lot of these songs together, and Billy presented them to Mike, and he was like really into what they were doing.
Ah, all right, cool.
That's my understanding. The other thing that's really cool from around this time is that they played a show in 2016 with Chuck to celebrate the reissue of We Care a Lot. You remember those Chuck reunion shows,
I
dude?
do. I watched them live. There was like a live stream to pull up that night when they did it, and I was sat there on my pretty little ass and watched it. It may not have been a completely perfect thing, but dude, it was good enough, and it was super fucking awesome to see these guys back together. And they're all excited to be together too, more than anything. And Mike's there too, just fucking rooting them on. It's awesome.
It's really a feel-good way for this band to come full circle. I guess unfortunately Courtney wasn't invited to the party, but
that's all right.
We did get Chuck. That's awesome, dude.
Yes, it is, man. See, Billy, he was fucking going, he was into it.
Yeah, he's real into it. These guys are having a full circle moment right here.
Dude. I know those vibes are fucking flowing, dude.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself.
This has a good Chuck chorus.
Oh man, I would have loved to have been there.
Dude, people are losing their shit.
I would have been fucking one of them just going batshit crazy. I really love how much you can tell like Roddy and Billy are fucking jumping around, man. Like they're kids again. Up there with Chuck.
So you know what's also interesting of note is that these are the most recent performances from Faith No More.
Is it?
In addition to being their final shows with Mosley, who passed away in November of 2017.
Yeah, unfortunately. Rest in peace, Chuck. This was the most recent performance by Faith No More, though?
Yeah.
Wow. They were gonna go on tour a few years back, and then Mike pulled out for, like, you know, some mental stuff. You remember that?
Yes, I think the most recent thing was they were going to reunite and play some shows with Korn.
Right.
And they were going to do these big arena tours. And last minute, Mike felt that he wasn't in a condition to be able to tour, and the whole thing got canceled.
Damn.
After that is when he reunited with Mr. Bungle, and they started doing the Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny stuff.
Right. So he's been all with Bungle for a while now.
Yeah, and I think that whole Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny thing has stopped now. So at this point, there's not much going on in the world of Faith No More or in the world of Mr. Bungle or Mike Patton. We're sort of waiting to see what the next chapter and phase is.
It's not over. They will be back. I am certain of it. Mike needed some time. He got the Bungle thing out of the way. He'll be back, and they're going to freaking bring it. They're going to goddamn kill it.
I very much look forward to that day.
These guys were super highly influential in general, man. Not just to me or you, but the music community. They changed so many things when they popped onto the scene. And, you know, they had their highs, they had their lows, but Jesus Christ, these guys are one of a kind.
Yeah, this is one of those groups that if you were to throw them on, you know immediately who you're listening to. And there are a lot of folks who aren't even familiar with this band outside of Epic, which is unbelievable. I hope that since we've decided to take this journey tonight, that you now realize, if you were not familiar with Faith No More prior to this, that they are way more than just epic.
This is what we do. We bring things to the front for you people to listen to and acknowledge and open your ears and your minds and realize you gotta keep digging. Sometimes it isn't just one song. Sometimes those one-hit wonder bands, dude, sometimes they're a hell of a lot better than you even realize. But you know what, dude? I think it would only be fair if we let Faith No More play us out.
Let's do it. Yes, dude.
I won't forget you. Perfect
I remember rocking out to this song with you, air guitaring it in a certain individual's basement. And it was pretty fun.
I remember us discovering this song, like on a greatest hits album, and we were like, "What the fuck? Where did this song come from?"